Number 1. The Assassination of Julius Caesar. It's March 15th, 44 BC, the Ides of March, and Julius Caesar is walking into the Senate. He's at the height of his power. He's been declared dictator perpetuo, dictator in perpetuity, and Rome is essentially his. He's reformed the calendar, distributed land to the poor, granted citizenship to conquered peoples, and transformed a crumbling republic into something that actually works. Not everyone is happy about this, but Caesar figures he's made enough friends to protect him from his enemies. He's wrong. As Caesar takes his seat, a senator named Tullius Cimber approaches and grabs his toga, pulling it down off his shoulder. Caesar is annoyed. "This is violence," he says, and then Casca, standing behind him, pulls out a dagger and stabs him in the neck. What follows is one of the most famous murders in human history. 23 senators draw concealed daggers and descend on Caesar in a frenzy. They stab him 23 times. Caesar tries to fight back at first, but he's surrounded. According to some accounts, when he sees Marcus Brutus among his attackers, a man he considered almost a son, a man he had personally pardoned after the Civil War, a man he had mentored and promoted, Caesar stops resisting. The ancient sources differ on whether he actually said et tu, Brute, or if that was Shakespeare's invention. But the look on his face when he saw Brutus was apparently enough to haunt everyone who witnessed it. Caesar collapses at the base of a statue of his old rival Pompey. The senators stand over his body, their togas soaked in blood, and congratulate themselves on saving the Republic. They hadn't saved anything. The assassination plunged Rome into over a decade of civil wars that killed hundreds of thousands of people and destroyed the very republic the conspirators claimed to be protecting. Brutus and Cassius were hunted down and killed. Caesar's adopted heir, Octavian, eventually emerged as sole ruler and became Emperor Augustus, the first Roman emperor. The conspirators murdered Caesar to prevent one-man rule and ended up guaranteeing it. Every single one of them died violently. None of them got what they wanted. Caesar had reportedly been warned not to attend the Senate that day. A soothsayer had told him to beware the Ides of March. His wife, Calpurnia, had nightmares about his death and begged him to stay home. He went anyway. When you think you're untouchable, warnings just sound like noise. Number 2. The fall of Constantinople's last ally. It's 1453, and the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II is laying siege to Constantinople with an army of 80,000 men. The Byzantine Empire, once the mightiest power in the Christian world, has been reduced to basically just the city itself and a few surrounding villages. Emperor Constantine XI is defending the walls with a garrison of maybe 7,000 men, including a contingent of Genoese mercenaries led by a soldier named Giovanni Giustiniani. Giustiniani is good, really good. He's been holding the most vulnerable section of the walls, the Mesotation, against everything the Ottomans can throw at it. For nearly 2 months, he repels assault after assault. The Ottomans have a massive cannon that can hurl 600-pound stone balls, and Giustiniani's men repair the walls every night after each bombardment. Against impossible odds, Constantinople is holding. Then, on May 29th, during the final assault, Giustiniani is hit. Accounts vary. Some say it was an arrow, others say a bullet from an early firearm, others say a crossbow bolt that found a gap in his armor. The wound isn't necessarily fatal, but Giustiniani panics. He asks Constantine for the key to a gate in the inner wall so he can retreat to the rear and get medical treatment. Constantine begs him to stay. "Your wound is not serious. Stay at your post. We need you here." But Giustiniani insists. The gate is opened and he's carried through. His Genoese troops see their commander retreating and assume the battle is lost. They pour through the open gate after him, abandoning the walls. The Ottomans see the sudden gap in the defense and pour through. Within hours, Constantinople, the city that had stood for over 1,000 years, that had survived dozens of sieges, that was supposed to be impregnable, falls. Emperor Constantine XI charges into the oncoming Ottoman soldiers, and is never seen again. Most historians believe he was killed in the fighting, and his body was never identified. Now, whether Giustiniani's retreat was a betrayal or simply a wounded man making a human decision under impossible circumstances is debatable. He died of his wounds a few days later on the island of Chios, but the defenders who watched him leave through that gate, the men who stayed and died on the walls while their commander fled, probably had a pretty strong opinion about it. Number 3. The Betrayal of Atahualpa. It's 1532 and Francisco Pizarro has arrived in the Inca Empire with 168 Spanish soldiers. He's staring at a civilization of over 10 million people ruled by the Sapa Inca Atahualpa, who commands an army of 80,000 warriors. By any reasonable assessment, Pizarro should be dead within a week. But Pizarro has no intention of fighting fair. He sends messengers to Atahualpa, inviting him to a meeting in the town of Cajamarca. Pizarro tells Atahualpa that he comes in peace, that he's an ambassador of a great king from across the sea, and that he wishes only to talk. Atahualpa, who has just won a devastating civil war against his own brother and is feeling confident, agrees to meet. On November 16, 1532, Atahualpa arrives in the main square of Cajamarca with an entourage of around 6,000 unarmed attendants. This is a diplomatic meeting. Nobody brings weapons to a peace talk. The Inca are dressed in ceremonial finery, gold jewelry, feathered headdresses, colorful textiles. Pizarro's men are hidden in the buildings surrounding the square, with horses, cannons, and steel weapons. A Dominican friar named Vicente de Valverde approaches Atahualpa and hands him a Bible. Through an interpreter, he tells the Inca ruler that he must accept Christianity and submit to the King of Spain. Atahualpa, who has never seen a book before, holds the Bible to his ear, listens, hears nothing, and throws it on the ground. Valverde runs back to Pizarro, screaming that the savage has desecrated the Holy Scripture. Pizarro gives the signal. Cannons fire into the packed crowd. Cavalry charges out from the buildings. Spanish soldiers with steel swords begin hacking through unarmed Inca attendants who have nowhere to run. The square becomes a slaughterhouse. In about 2 hours, approximately 2,000 Inca are killed. Not a single Spaniard dies. Atahualpa is pulled from his litter and captured, but the betrayal doesn't end there. Atahualpa, now a prisoner, offers Pizarro an incredible ransom, enough gold to fill a room 22 feet long, 17 feet wide, and 8 feet high, plus twice that amount in silver. Pizarro agrees. Over the next several months, Inca workers strip temples and palaces across the empire, melting down centuries of irreplaceable artwork into bars of gold and silver and delivering it to the Spanish. Atahualpa fills the room. He fulfills his end of the bargain completely. The ransom is estimated at around $50 million in today's money, the largest ransom ever paid in history. Pizarro takes the gold and executes Atahualpa anyway. He has him strangled in the main square of Cajamarca on August 29, 1533. The excuse was that Atahualpa had been charged with treason against the Spanish crown, treason against a country he'd never heard of, committed on land his ancestors had ruled for centuries. The Inca Empire collapsed within a few years. The gold was shipped to Spain. And Pizarro? He was assassinated by supporters of a rival conquistador in 1541. They broke into his palace in Lima and stabbed him to death. As he lay dying, Pizarro reportedly drew a cross in his own blood on the floor and kissed it. There's a lesson in there about karma. Number 4. The Siege of Masada and the Roman Promise. It's 73 AD, and nearly 1,000 Jewish rebels, men, women, and children, are holed up on top of Masada, a natural fortress perched on a plateau in the Judean desert. The Roman 10th Legion has been besieging them for months, slowly building an enormous ramp of earth and stone up the side of the cliff. 3 years earlier, the Romans had destroyed the temple in Jerusalem and crushed the great Jewish revolt. These rebels on Masada were the last holdouts, the final remnants of resistance against Roman occupation. Their leader was Eleazar ben Yair, a man who would rather die than surrender. Now, the betrayal here isn't the dramatic kind, with daggers and declarations. It's subtler. Throughout the siege, Roman commanders repeatedly sent messengers to the top of Masada offering terms. Surrender, and your lives will be spared. Lay down your weapons, and you'll be treated fairly. Rome is merciful. The rebels at Masada knew exactly what Roman mercy looked like. They'd seen Jerusalem. They'd watched the Romans crucify hundreds of Jewish prisoners along the roads, enslave tens of thousands, and burn their holiest site to the ground. Roman mercy was subjugation, slavery, and the destruction of everything you held sacred. When the Romans finally completed their ramp and prepared for the final assault, Eleazar gathered the defenders and gave a speech. According to Josephus, a controversial source, since he himself had been a Jewish rebel who surrendered to Rome and became a Roman historian, Eleazar argued that death by their own hands was preferable to what Rome would do to them. That night, the defenders made their choice. Each man killed his own family. Then the men drew lots and killed each other until only one remained. That final man set the food stores on fire, so the Romans would know they hadn't died from starvation, but from choice, and then took his own life. When the Romans breached the walls the next morning, they found 960 bodies and silence. Only 2 women and 5 children had survived by hiding in a water cistern. The Roman promise of mercy was the betrayal. Not because the Romans explicitly lied. Maybe they would have spared the rebels' lives. But the system that promise existed within had already shown what it really meant. "We'll spare your life," coming from the people who just burned your temple and enslaved your nation, sounds a lot different than it reads on paper. Number 5. The Night of the Long Knives. It's June 30th, 1934, and Ernst Röhm, the leader of the SA, the Sturmabteilung, the Nazi paramilitary force, goes to sleep in a hotel in Bad Wiessee, Germany. He has no idea that his best friend has just signed his death warrant. Röhm and Adolf Hitler go way back. Röhm was one of the earliest and most loyal members of the Nazi Party. He built the SA from a handful of street thugs into a paramilitary force of over 3 million men. The organization that beat up political opponents, intimidated voters, and muscled Hitler into power. Without Röhm and the SA, there would have been no Third Reich. Hitler called Röhm one of the only people he addressed with the informal "du," the German equivalent of being on a first-name basis. They were genuinely close. But by 1934, the SA had become a problem. Röhm wanted to merge the SA with the German army, which would have made him one of the most powerful military figures in Europe. The actual German military, the Reichswehr, was horrified by this idea. They saw the SA as an undisciplined mob and Röhm as a thug with delusions of grandeur. They told Hitler it was either them or Röhm. Hitler chose the army. In the early morning hours of June 30th, SS troops burst into Röhm's hotel room and arrested him. Röhm was confused. He kept asking to speak to Hitler, convinced there had been some mistake. There was no mistake. Over the next 3 days, the SS executed at least 85 people, though some estimates put the number much higher. SA leaders were pulled from their beds and shot. Former political allies who knew too much were killed. Even people who had nothing to do with the SA but had simply annoyed Hitler at some point were added to the list. It was a purge disguised as a necessary action against a supposed coup. Röhm himself was given a pistol and told to do the honorable thing. He refused. "If Adolf wants me dead, let him do the dirty work himself," he reportedly said. 2 SS officers entered his cell and shot him. His last words, according to witnesses, were, "Mein Führer, mein Führer." The man who had built the machine that put Hitler in power, who had considered Hitler his closest friend, died confused and calling out for someone who had already moved on. Hitler went on national radio the next day and justified the killings as necessary to prevent treason. The German public mostly accepted it. The army, having gotten what they wanted, swore a personal oath of loyalty to Hitler. Röhm had helped create a monster. He just didn't realize the monster would eventually turn on him. They never do. So there you have it. 5 betrayals that changed the course of history. Caesar's senators turned on the man who made them. Constantinople fell because one man abandoned his post. Atahualpa paid the ransom and was killed anyway. The defenders of Masada knew Roman mercy was a lie, and Ernst Röhm built the machine that killed him. The common thread? Every single one of these people trusted that the rules would be honored, that friendship meant something, that a deal was a deal, and every single one of them learned the hardest lesson history has to teach. The people closest to you are the ones who can hurt you the most.